Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on the John Mast murder. Well, I can't say that because he wasn't convicted of murder. I guess I could talk about that too. He was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. What happened to this person and why is he triggering coverage on this video? That's what I'm going to start with. Most of the time I don't cover this stuff. There's a lot of this stuff floating around. There's a lot of cases of domestic violence. There's a lot of cases of domestic violence killings. Even in Nevada alone, there's like 4 or 5 in the past couple months. They're spiking. Even in Nevada alone, there are these extraordinary situations where it's not even the ex who commits the killing. It's somebody connected to the ex. There was a case in Nevada a couple of years ago, I believe, maybe a year or two ago, when a retired female detective killed her daughter's ex. The John Mast case involves the ex's dad, so the child's grandfather, killing the victim. In both of these cases, it appears to me that the grandparents thought they were saving the child and that the only way they could do it was to go vigilante. And my perspective on both cases, both the John Mast one and the Nevada one, is that the high conflict parent duped the grandparent, which is extraordinarily easy for them to do. They're masters of manipulation. I've looked into both cases. In this case in particular, I only found out about it recently, but the guy was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. If you want to watch the trial, it's on a channel called Dad Talk Today. I believe it's covered completely and totally 100% covered. I know that Dad Talk Today also did a documentary, and I watched it. It was good, but it wasn't really helpful to me. I don't think it would be helpful to most on this channel, but I do think that it might be helpful in states where they just are not caught up to this kind of issue. So I also do like that he did a documentary, because there's a lot of fathers' rights movements out there. There's another big one. This one's pretty big too. And I haven't seen them do anything like this before. So it's a constructive effort. I just don't want to give it a glowing recommendation, because I think a lot of you might watch it and not like it or find it useless or a waste of time. And that's just because most of us on this channel are in the weeds of motions, oppositions, replies, hearings, and not so much, just reading summaries on this stuff. So it looks like a good channel. It looks similar to Father's Rights Movement. The leader, I don't remember his name, but kind of reminds me of Ken Rosa. I haven't watched a lot of him, so don't get angry at me if I'm wrong. Maybe if I see more of this guy's videos, I might have more to say. All I want to say, guys, is you can watch this stuff. It's out there. So again, Dad Talk Today has the murder trial end to end, and it has the documentary. Watched all that stuff. I got some insight, but mostly what I want to talk about is the aftermath. From what I have seen, most of the time in these situations, a criminal case starts. I remember with the Nevada the female detective, she was criminally prosecuted. Obviously, this guy was criminally prosecuted. I'm going to try to not tangle up all of my discussion, and I'll just stay focused on the murder case right now. A lot of people are upset. I've been reading the chat replay. I've seen a couple of videos from the Dad Talk Today guy, and they're upset. They think it's a joke. They hate that he didn't get convicted of murder, blah, blah, blah. This, in my opinion, is a wake-up call for anyone who thinks that what is going on in family court is moving into the realm of mainstream. It's not. It's not. High conflict child custody is a very niche issue. Most of society does not understand the insanity of it. And so it does not shock me in the slightest that a jury came to the conclusion that it did. I have talked to these people before. People who have not gone through the insanity of a high conflict child custody case do one of two things for the most part. The first thing that they do is they're very dismissive of it. Number one thing is, you guys are just nuts. I don't know why you just don't get over it. Get over it, move on. You broke up. Why do you do this stuff? It makes no sense. And they just don't want to think about it, because to them it's like mental health asylum level insane. They can't understand it. And so a lot of people just say it's both your faults. You guys are crazy. That's it. The second thing that they do is, okay, maybe I was wrong. Something really bad happened. A grandfather killed his ex-son-in-law. What's the first thing they do? Is they think to themselves, why would I do that? That's what they do. Why would I, if I was a grandfather, kill my ex-son-in-law? And they start to think about that. And it's especially from this perspective of the male, which is supposed to be protective. It's like, okay, maybe my grandchild was being horribly, horribly abused and I had to kill the guy. I mean, they think that way, guys. Because what's the alternative to that? The alternative to that is a decade-long spanning smear campaign with three-dimensional chess moves of manipulation and games and motions and contempt and lawyers. Like that, most people cannot think in that insane mode. They think, oh, I know what happened. Kid was being abused and he shot the dad. Revenge or protection. And that's what happens. Because awareness is not just yelling something. Awareness is not just a million people yelling something. I've said this before, and that's why I believe in the mission of our Nevada judges. Awareness is showing people. If you can tell people, and this is one of the things that these groups are starting to hit. They're starting to hit this wall where the only people who believe them are the people who have gone through it. And so these communities of high conflict child custody victims have amassed and joined groups. And that was a very crucial first step, because now they don't feel alone. But now, how do you get the rest of society to understand the insanity and the extraordinary counterintuitiveness of a high conflict child custody case? And that's the problem that I don't think any of these groups can solve, because you have to see it for yourself to believe it. So to me, of course, the jury came back that way. And I think that's why so many prosecutors are very hesitant to touch this stuff. And I know for sure, that this is why so many news reporters avoid family court like the plague. Because even they don't understand it. Extraordinary levels of extreme ignorance on high conflict child custody continues to pervade society. And these groups are going to continue to hit this wall, and we're going to continue to see verdicts like this. You may even see some not guilties come out. Maybe the jury does believe that the person who was shot was a pedo or something. And then what are they going to do? Deliver a not guilty? So I think that this, as frustrating as this trial was for Dad Talk Today and their viewers, I think that this should be a wake-up call for all of these groups that you have formed 500 to 600, 400,000 strong, which is good, but you are, in comparison to, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of Americans we have in our population. I need to look it up. I don't know, 350, 400 million Americans. And they don't think that it makes any sense. So they try and make sense of it in their own head in the ways that I described earlier, which manifests itself in those types of verdicts. I think there was a very real chance that this person could have gotten a hung jury. I think there's even a possibility that this person could have gotten a not guilty. From what I have seen, is there was multiple people showed up at the exchange. So the person, he was shot at an exchange. Multiple people showed up. It was filmed. It didn't matter. It didn't matter because he didn't deny it. He told the court, I proudly admit killing him, and the reason why is to save the grandkid. So this is a situation that all of these groups are going to start bumping into. And like I said, guys, it's an important first step. It's important to organize, because once you organize, you don't feel like you're alone. Once you don't feel like you're alone, you're able to understand that you're being subjected to an injustice. You can share knowledge, you can strategize, you can support each other. But none of that is going to magically make the rest of the population believe you. So unless the rest of the population is subjected to high conflict child custody cases, which will never happen, the only way forward is camera coverage of the insanity of these family court cases. Because when they see it with their own eyes, you bet your ass they'll believe it. Because they'll see the crazy. And that's the next step. So that's as far as I can go with the criminal stuff. The same thing, guys. If you're frustrated, why don't prosecutors go after my ex for blah, blah, blah? Same thing. All this work, and you get a crappy verdict. I mean, if you look at the Michael McDonald coverage in the state of Nevada versus Michael McDonald, you'll see the extraordinary amount of work the state had to go to just to prove, what was it? Wiretapping and forgery or something, like burglary, stuff like that. I mean, we're talking low-level crimes. You know, nobody got shot, nobody got stabbed, nobody got killed, none of that. Were low-level crimes, and it took that disproportionate amount of effort to secure conviction in 2 trials. And if you've watched those trials, you will know that the defense strategy is to reduce it to a child custody squabble, which is what happens all the time. I have seen civil cases where people are like, hey, Alex, I don't know why this is happening. Well, if you sue your ex's lawyer, their defense strategy 99 out of 100 times is going to say, hey, jury, guess what's going on? We broke up. And they're pissed off. They're mad that we broke up. They sued me. That's it. Just turn your brain off. Just go into your brain. Just flip that switch and just flippantly, reduce this to just a squabble from family court that's spilled into criminal/civil, whatever. It's like the playbook. And because ordinary people don't know what high conflict child custody looks like, but they do know what a separation looks like, it's a very effective way to defend yourself. And it turns the prosecutor's battle into a very uphill battle. So it's really, like, if you guys are ever wondering why the police don't investigate, this is the amount of work it takes for them to investigate and prosecute one of these types of cases. Jurors don't get it. They don't get it. So going into the next case, I want to talk more about the litigation. That's why I'm doing this video. The civil lawsuit for, they call him wrongful death. Same thing happened, as far as I know, same thing happened with the detective in Nevada. This is a pretty standard thing. Is, okay, criminal case gets finished, the killer gets prosecuted, convicted, and now the family wants money. This is not too interesting of a suit to me. My understanding is they're not very difficult. Once a conviction is secured, it's just not a hard thing to accomplish. Just one thing I want to throw out there is I have a bad feeling that a lot of these killers are not millionaires. And so there may be judgments in that area, millions of dollars, and the killer has like a truck and $600 in the bank. And that's that. That's all you're going to get. I don't even know. Maybe they can bankrupt it off. I don't know. If there's somebody in here who knows about that, post it down in the comments below. I noticed with the this particular civil lawsuit that they sued for fraud as well. I have a very fuzzy recollection that certain types of damages are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. Fraud might be one of them. I don't know what to tell you guys, though, because look, say they can't bankrupt it off, but they're still poor, or they're in prison and they're not going to get out for the rest of their life. Their spouse isn't guilty of fraud. So, I mean, like, so this guy's married, so they could sue the community, estate, and try and take his wife's stuff, but she's not, I mean, she hasn't done anything fraudulent. She hasn't killed somebody. So what's going to happen with her? Can she discharge it? I mean, does that limit her liability? The thing is, I hate to say the truth of it is, I have a bad feeling that a lot of these situations, the killer is not a millionaire and is not a billionaire. And the amount of monetary damages that somebody's going to recover is probably not going to be very high. Which leads us to the third lawsuit, which is the most interesting in my opinion. The third lawsuit is the who's going to get the kids now. And these almost always come up as well. And usually it's a fight between the killer's family and the victim's family. And a lot of times the killer's family has an edge because they have the living biological parent. There's a parent who is alive, a biological parent. And then on the other side of the equation, it's very unfair and criminal, but the other biological parent is dead. So the only people who can come in is typically going to be like the grandparents or maybe the sisters and brothers. These people aren't biological parents though. So there's still going to be legal hurdles for them to clear. Now, I've heard of these before. I think they call it the parental preference presumption or the parental preference doctrine, and it's rooted in the Constitution, and it makes it much more difficult for a non-parent to get custody of a child over the parent's objection. A lot of people would say, oh, hold on a second, if they killed their ex, they shouldn't get custody. Yeah, the government agrees with that. They shouldn't get custody. A lot of times, even if they somehow could get custody, they're going to be in prison, possibly the rest of their lives or for a really long time. But what happens in these really weird cases where the killer isn't the parent? The killer is a friend or a parent's parent, grandparent of the child. Now what happens? Now it gets tricky. I haven't looked into any of this because I don't have the documentation for it, but my number one hunch is that the biological parent is going to go into court and say, I didn't tell my dad to kill him. I didn't tell him to do that. They may even say, I didn't want him to do that. I did not want my dad to kill my ex. I did not want my dad to do what he did. I'm really upset that he did that. He didn't tell me he was going to do that. He didn't warn me that he was going to do that. He just up and went and killed him one day. And I am just completely innocent and completely in the dark and had no clue whatsoever. And you can imagine how these types of cases can go from very simple sounding to convoluted. And what happens? I know people are going to be cynical and they're going to say, well, there's no way. She had to have known. High conflict parent, liar, all this evidence. She had to have known. Okay, yeah, sure. But you have to admit, there may actually be situations where somebody didn't know. There could be cases. There could be cases where somebody's dad or mom or friend takes matter into their own hands and that parent didn't want that to happen. And let's just assume that that's true. Is it fair for them to lose custody of their kids for what other people did that they didn't want them to do? Most people here will say no. Imagine that you come home one day and police knock at your door and you open the door and they're like, hey, your ex is dead and your dad did it and you legit didn't have a clue that was going to happen. How would you feel if you lost your kids for something that you did not approve of? So this creates a situation where, as frustrating as it is, there is a question of fact. And the court has to determine whether or not that person was involved. And I would imagine that if that person was involved, there would be some kind of precedent out there or something that would indicate that you probably don't want to give a child to the killer of the ex. So you have a situation in my imagination. I hope that people have more insight on this. Post it down in the comments below if you do. You have a situation like this where it really comes down to, did they have any clue? And if they did, they probably aren't going to get custody. And if they didn't, they probably are. They probably are. And it's probably messed up. And in some situations, maybe the grandparents will get, on the other side, on the victim side, will get visitation. More likely than not, they will get some kind of visitation. I would imagine a judge would sympathize with that. I would imagine a judge would think it's not fair that you don't get to see your grandkids. because your son got killed, and so here you go, have some every other weekend or something. I would imagine that that's going to happen. But does that like make it all okay? It doesn't. In these types of situations, I think most people, probably 99% of people, would say, yeah, if mom was involved in securing the death of her ex, she probably shouldn't get anything. Nothing. No visits, no nothing, nothing, nothing. Most people would probably say that. So yeah, that's really what's interesting to me, guys, is the aftermath of that very third case, the case of who gets the kids. So all I can tell you guys is those are my thoughts. Hopefully this video is insightful to you guys. I thought there was something else that I wanted to talk about, but I guess not. Well, actually, kinda. I kinda do want to talk about this. So when I went through my own child custody dispute for 8 years, I did worry about this sometimes. I'm not sure there's a lot you can do to avoid being ambushed. I know that I mentioned in my videos that when I was putting the car seat in and out, I did not like her coming up behind me. And that was actually what happened. I guess the father was arranging the car seat so his upper body was in his car and his back was exposed. But the father-in-law didn't shoot him in the back immediately. He actually said, hello, what's his name? John. He said, hello, John. And so he waited for John to get out of the car and turn and face him before he shot him. So I don't know what that was about. I guess a tiny sense of honor, wanted to shoot him in the front. But then, of course, John starts running away, and then he just shoots him in the back 3 times. So I don't know. The stuff you have to think about, guys. I mean, I've thought about this stuff. It's really not cool to have to think about that kind of stuff, but I have thought about it. Body armor, somebody brought that up. Hey, he should have wore body armor. Yeah. If he did, he would be alive. But it doesn't always work. I don't think... Okay, so with the the female detective, I'm pretty sure she shot him in the head. So, I mean, maybe sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what to tell you guys. This stuff sucks to think about. The danger is real in these types of cases. You'll see signs of it. I saw signs of it in mine. I think I've talked about it before where, at least in my opinion, it seemed to me with my ex, in my opinion, that it wouldn't be her, but somebody she duped. And I see these cases where that happens, so that kind of confirms that that's how it can happen. Yeah. I mean, the safety part, I mean, and then some people say, okay, well, don't do it at your house. Well, that would work for the detective in Nevada because she shot him in the house. But this guy, the John Mast killer, he shot him in a parking lot. So they did have a third, a location. Bringing witnesses. He brought a bunch of witnesses. He brought like 3 witnesses, and one of them videotaped it, and it didn't matter. He still got shot, still got killed. The other guy only got a voluntary man. So, like, this is just, I think that this is one of those things that society needs to figure out how it works. And I think that it's just going to keep getting worse until they do. All right, guys, I guess this is good for today. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.